New York reserves her time. The gentleman from Kentucky is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I yield 5 minutes to the gentlelady from Texas, Kay Granger, who is the chairman of the Foreign Operations Subcommittee on Appropriations, but more importantly here, accepted the responsibility of the Speaker to put together a task force to investigate the problem on the border and to recommend solutions, and she has with great success. So let me recognize yield 5 minutes to the gentlelady from Texas, Kay Granger.
The gentlewoman from Texas is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, can you? Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for yielding. Mr. Speaker, Ms. Speaker, as we speak, unaccompanied minors continue to be sent from Central America through drug cartel smuggling networks across Mexico and through our southern border. Families are being lied to and manipulated by the coyotes. The $6,000 their families spend to send their children to the United States into the bank accounts of the most powerful drug cartels in the world. Since October, over 58,000 unaccompanied children have made the dangerous journey to the United States, and many more will continue to come unless we send a clear message that they will not be allowed to stay in the United States. I have seen firsthand the crisis that has unfolded at the southern border in places like the Rio Grande Valley and South Texas. I've seen the women and children sleeping on the floor of a bus station in Laredo. I've seen motherless infants being cared for by any stranger who is around. And I've seen the children who are alone in detention facilities in McAllen, Texas. And I've seen the 1,200 children who are being sheltered at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio. And most disturbing of all, I've heard the stories about the most god-awful journey anyone should ever have to experience. We're here today because we have a responsibility to stop this crisis. The President has failed to lead, so I firmly believe this chamber must act. Doing nothing is not an option. Since June, when the Speaker asked me to lead a working group to provide policy recommendations on what we can do to address the crisis, I've been to the Texas-Mexico border twice and led a CODEL to Guatemala and Honduras to see where the children are coming from and why. I'll be returning to the border tomorrow for a third time. The members of the working group dove headfirst into this issue to understand this crisis and provide recommendations for a short-term immediate response. The policies we recommended are not an attempt for immigration reform. They are serious solutions to address this crisis. I want to take a moment to recognize the hard work of the members of the working group who made policy recommendations to the conference and the expertise they brought to the table. I want to thank Chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Bob Goodlatte, Chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, Michael McCall, Chairman of the Homeland Security Appropriations Subcommittee, John Carter, Chairman of the Western Hemisphere Foreign Affairs Subcommittee, Matt Salmon, Congressman Steve Pierce from the Financial Services Committee, and Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart from the Appropriations Committee. One of our conclusions from the last several weeks is that Congress should not provide more resources to the administration without changing the policies that have led us to the situation we're in today. Administration officials and officials in the Central American countries have all said that we have to make changes to the Trafficking Victims Protection Reauthorization Act of 2008. A month ago, it appeared there was a bipartisan consensus forming on this issue. White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest said from the White House podium just 3 weeks ago when discussing changes to the 2008 law, that is, quote, a priority of this administration, and if you listen to the public comments of Democrats and Republicans, it sounds like it's a bipartisan priority. I agree, and it's disappointing that the White House has backed down from their original statements on how we could immediately address this issue. We're not asking for a repeal of this law. We are saying we need to tweak the 2008 law so that all unaccompanied minors are treated the same as Mexican and Canadian children for removal purposes. The policy changes included in this bill ensure that children receive a prompt hearing within 7 days after they're detained and require that a judge rules no later than 72 hours after a hearing. Accelerating the hearing times requires more judges. I thank the chairman for including the necessary funding to hire 40 temporary judges until this crisis is under control. For repatriations, we're prioritizing last in, first out. That means the last child to go into United States government custody will be the first ones we send home. After families have spent between $6,000 and $9,000 to send their children here, this will send a strong message to the families in the countries of origin that their children will not be permitted to stay. This is a message of deterrence. I also note that Chairman Rogers has prioritized funding for Central American countries to safely and humanely return these children. Working with these countries as we return their children as they have asked us to do. With the surge of children, there's been an increased pressure on our Customs and Border Protection officials. This supplemental deploys the National Guard to assist high-traffic states and will free up the Border Patrol to focus on their mission.
I yield the gentlelady an extra 1 minute.
Thank you.
The gentlewoman is recognized for an additional minute.
To fully support Customs and Border Protection's mission, we include a provision to allow Border Patrol unfettered access to federal lands. Right now, through a memorandum of understanding, Border Patrol officials are only permitted to pursue suspects into federal lands. They cannot do regular patrols. And finally, the supplemental includes a sense of Congress that children should not be detained at military bases. While this will not change the law, this provision addresses a serious and growing concern from members of Congress. Not least of the concerns is that children should not be stored on military bases. The Congressional Budget Office has given its assessment of the policy changes in this bill. They've said that because the legislation allows for the children to self-deport, it will lead to immediate savings. This is a smart, targeted bill that addresses the crisis immediately. I urge my colleagues to vote yes on the supplemental and show the American people that we're going to end this crisis. I thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman yields back to the gentleman from Kentucky.